Okay, welcome back to the Adventure Within channel. My name is Andrew Fritz. I'm a clairvoyant, healer, and meditation teacher. And today we have an interview with Jordan Harcourt-Hughes. And she's an abstract painter, writer, and communications professional. She's passionate about all aspects of creativity, lifelong learning, and personal well-being. With over 15 years of experience leading and mentoring creative professionals across the Asia-Pacific region, Jordan brings a deep understanding of artistic expression and communication into her own creative work. In writing the Bitroux books, Jordan aims to create a space where we can explore the relationship between language, sound, and the human body. She explores the potential of a vibrational language, one that transcends human perception, and offers a new way to engage with otherworld consciousness. Jordan's art-making practice is integral to her fiction writing, and she has published an illustrated version of High Country that features 28 of her original artworks. The paintings highlight her love of color, deep connection with nature, a heightened language, and invite a dialogue about our connection with otherworld intelligence. Okay, hi Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. I'm really excited about this interview and just meeting with you and discovering more about what you do and what you offer and what you share with the world. I like to start things off with, because you're an artist, and I
Mhm.
want to get into, when and how did that kind of all unfold? When did that start for you? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting start for me. I literally didn't really get into art until my mid-20s, actually. So,
Mm,
as a kid, I really wasn't interested in painting. I never felt overly drawn to the studio kind of practice. I always wanted to be a writer. So,
mm,
actually, I was always creative, but I always wanted to write. And actually, the only reason that I got into art is because when I was about 19, I had a very early existential crisis. And
mm,
I really came to this kind of feeling that words really weren't enough to express everything that there was to express. And I didn't think that they were a very good way to really be honest. I thought
mm,
people could do lots of things with words. You can lie, or you can delude, or you can take people on this kind of journey down the garden path. And I really thought that that was not quite right. And I had a really strong sense that there must be something better. There must be a better way that we can commune and connect with each other. And I didn't know
mm,
what it was. And actually, so after school, I went to study journalism, and it was there that everything just kind of slowed down and then crumbled. And
mm.
it was as if the whole world that I knew imploded and there was nothing left, and I had to start from scratch. So, and this was in Australia. So I went to
Mhm.
university out of school in central New South Wales. And after this implosion, I just decided to travel. So I ended up going to Scotland. And Scotland was where I started really starting to explore art. And it was a funny thing because there was just one line I was playing with in my head, which was, I have to explore metal. I think it's about metal. And
Mm,
so I didn't really know where that came from, but it was a fascination. So I went and I found a place to study metal sculpture. And it
mm,
was amazing. So I spent a year in Scotland, and it was a very quiet year. So I literally found a place where I could study metal sculpture. I lived alone. I was like a hermit. It was like a hermit year, which was fantastic. It really allowed me to release a lot of the past and just sit with this thing that was unfolding. And it
mhm,
was a very spiritual year for me. It was really profound. I had out of body experiences. I was really very much in this unfolding experience of reality where I really didn't really know what was going on. Actually, it was all very strange and surreal, but I loved it. And then when I came back from that year, I went and enrolled in a fine arts degree in Sydney, and I went from metalwork to sculptural installations. So I was doing these massive installations, big, big pieces, which were incredibly interesting.
mm.
And after university, I kind of went into painting because it's very hard when you're living in the city to figure out how you can even start a metal sculpture studio anyway. And
Sure.
then but painting was perfect. I loved it. It gave me the same sense of just feeling really grounded in the same way that doing working with metal had made me feel, really
Mm,
in the moment, very tactile, very physical. And so that's been my journey into art. and I've painted ever since, and I love it. For me, painting is a far more intuitive process, and it's a way of connecting with, I think, a sense of knowledge and insight. That is what I was looking for when I felt that this thing called language and words was really not the best that we could do. I found, funnily enough, after my art journey, through college, took me to study art. I then did go back to writing, so I now go between
Ah,
the two. I write and I paint, but I still feel that they are better together,
yeah,
and that they kind of support each other.
very cool. Um, Going back to it sounds like you said you used the word implosion, and I can
Yeah.
relate to that. I've had multiple times in my life, even kind of through now, where things are imploding and falling apart. And on one level, it seems like, oh no, this is not good. And even people around you can kind of go like, hey, what's going on? This is not good. But sometimes it's this blessing in disguise, or the thing that needs to fall apart so you can kind of move into a new space and new energy. Um,
Yes.
can you talk more about that if you're comfortable with it? Just kind of what you were going
Yeah,
through at that time?
I'm really comfortable with it. I think the thing that is challenging is that when you don't have any way to describe it, because no one, so, very often people just don't talk about these kinds of things. And so you don't have a reference point. And I was 19 when this big implosion happened to me. And I
Hmm.
just didn't have any way to explain it to people. No one really
Right.
understood what I was talking about. It was a very random thing for a 19-year-old to say, well, words don't work anymore. We have to figure this out. We have to find a better language. It's kind of
Right.
esoteric and strange. And so I really found that the best way for me was to pick myself up and start walking, and traveling and wandering. And it's
Hmm.
a very old story that we go on a journey. And for me, that was literally a journey. So the implosion for me was really devastating. It was a whole of my being. It was because I felt like everything that I thought I knew was just completely gone. And you really do, you're left with nothing. And that can, at any stage of life, that can be very confronting and very hard. And the thing that I really tried to focus on was being with myself through the journey. So
Hmm.
probably no one else is getting it. Everyone else has got other stuff going on in their lives, by the way. Like, they're not necessarily paying that much attention. And you kind of have to, I think, build a little bit of resilience. I found that if I could just be with myself, I could be okay. So I learned at that age to be independent and to be okay with the fact that maybe it would be a little bit lonely. But
Hmm.
if I was going after something that I really believed in, then that was okay. So
Hmm.
going and living in New Zealand, in Edinburgh, and living by myself and doing the journey by myself felt like a bit of a rite of passage. I felt like if I could do this by myself, then everyone else could come along later and I would be sorted. And I
Hmm.
kind of feel like that's kind of kept me in good stead throughout my life, because I think if you do go through these implosions, we do come out on the other side. And there is a pathway that will emerge after the implosion. When you sit with it and you let it settle, there is a pathway. But that also can be daunting, and it's not necessarily a pathway that anyone else can share or show you or tell you this is what it looks like, this is how you will feel, this is where it will take you. No one else will know that. You just have to be on the journey. So I think I felt equipped after that to be okay with wherever the journey was going to take me.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned the word intuition. It sounds like was it back with initially with the metal work? You had some sort of intuition with that particular art. Is that the first time? Is that accurate? And then, is that the first
Yeah.
time you like tuned into it and just followed it, or has it happened before?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a really great question. I remember the first time it really, really hit home, and it was a very intuitive sense. So when I was studying journalism, I was a good student. I was raised to be a good student. That's kind of the thing that gets embedded with us. I like to do the right thing. And so I was editor of my university newspaper. And I remember we were in the middle of the production one weekend. And this was back in the olden days where, a newspaper production was literally like a newspaper, old school. Um, and and I remember I was in the middle of the floor. We had everyone in the room. We were all laying out different articles, and I sat there and I felt this sense that this is the time to go. This is the time to pick myself up, to leave, to move on, because this wasn't for me. And I
Hmm.
did. I think that weekend I went through the process of literally dropping out of that first university degree. And I knew that that was going to be challenging and troubling for my parents who were paying for the degree at the time and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the intuition was very strong and it was very clear and it was very simple. It was a simple feeling of I have to literally put everything down. I have to stop what I'm doing and I have to get up and I have to walk out of this room and I have to take responsibility and take the next step towards the life that I really want, because I wanted to be living the life that I chose, not the life that I just kind of ended up with. Um,
Right.
so that was that very first intentional step. And then I think I started being able to tune into it more because I think it does land in your body. And for me, I started having these really clear senses of this is a moment, this is an important moment. And it was always an intuitive feeling of just everything becoming kind of still and quiet, and then a feeling towards something. So for me, it's always been just a feeling that I should be moving into some direction. So nothing more than a feeling of moving. This is the right thing to move into. It wasn't a sense of go directly here, take this train and do this journey.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just a general sense of this is the right thing to do.
Right. It would be
Maybe,
it would be nice sometimes if it was exact detailed
yeah,
instructions. I mean,
yeah.
step by step, here's what you do.
It'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so you mentioned before we move on, you mentioned out of body experiences.
Mm.
Those are I find really fascinating. Would you be willing to share any of that?
Yes, yes, it was. I mean, look, at the time, I really didn't even know what they were. I didn't know what I was experiencing, and there wasn't a lot of information at the time either to tell me what I was experiencing. But um, they started when I was in Scotland, and I was living by myself, and I would fall asleep. And it was probably about within maybe half an hour of going to sleep that my body would literally move into a state of vibration, and I
Mm,
would recognize it immediately. And it was very often that I would recognize it and I would wake up because I knew what was about to happen. And I was so terrified and so scared that I would try and actually awaken myself out of it because it
mm,
was so scary to me at the time. But when I didn't awaken myself out of it, I would move into that vibratory state and then something would detach and I could feel myself moving through space. And interestingly enough, it was a very tactile sensation. So one night I literally felt myself moving up through the ceiling and I could feel myself literally moving through the material of the roof. And
mm.
obviously it wasn't my physical body, but it was a sense of I could feel it in some way.
Yeah.
Um, and another time I remember, I was literally flying through the sky and I could feel my eyes streaming with water because the wind in my eyes was
Oh, wow.
literally. So, they're very abstract experiences and yet they were really tactile at the same time.
Hmm.
So that was a really interesting journey again, because I think when you don't have people around you that can tell you what is happening or how to do it or how to be with the experience, you're just winging it. You're dealing with your own fear and your own sense of what does this mean for life as I know it. Like,
Yeah.
people will tell me that this isn't a real thing, and people have told me it was just an imagination or a dream
Mm,
and I know that it was something that was I suppose it was a little bit of a lesson in the universe saying to me, everything isn't the way that you think it is. Let's
mm.
experience what it's like in this sense, and
Yeah.
just being able to open my eyes into different ways that we can be in and out of our bodies. Look, it stopped when I came back from Scotland, and at the time I was kind of glad for it. Like, I know some people love these experiences and they go very deeply into the practice of it and they do it as a lifelong journey.
Mm.
And possibly if I'd been a little bit older, I may have gone down that path of building it into a regular practice, because it was certainly an accidental thing that happened.
Mm.
But at the time, I think it was just enough to dislodge me out of a sense of the ordinary. And I was
Yeah.
happy with that because it made me open to lots of different experiences. And I appreciate it now at the time, because as I said, I had really been intentional about making that step forward. I want to be proud of the life that I live. I want to own it. I want to be the author of that life. And
Mm.
I think I was able to then kind of sit and with the experiences that came after that and say, well, this is all part of it. So even if I don't get it, even if it's slightly terrifying, then that's okay. This is my path, and this has come to me, and I will be able to understand it at some point.
Yeah. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Um, what do you feel? Um, because I've interviewed some people recently actually where they're artists and they're also really into spirituality. Do you find there's some sort of link or kind of bridge, with these two kind of
Yeah, I
worlds?
do. I really do. And I think it's because the practice of art really slows us down for a start. It really, for me, my practice is painting. So
Mm,
I love the fact that when I'm painting, I really am able to just sit there and stop thinking. And I cannot stress enough how important it is for us all to stop thinking.
yeah.
I think, we are so much in our logical minds. We think all the time, and we are encouraged to do so. We are all encouraged to be very logical and very cerebral and brain focused. But I really think what painting has done for me is bring me back to my body and help me
Mm,
to stop thinking and just have a break from my brain. So
mm,
once I stop that logical thinking circuit, I come back to a much more intuitive space, and that's a great first step. And
mm,
I think that intuitive space, that feeling of being in a different mindset, really starts helping me tap into the other things that are going on in the energetic environment around me. So I think I kind of I've always painted circles. So circles are a huge motif in my art practice.
mm,
And I like to think of spheres of energy being all around us and in the ether, in the energetic environment. And what I feel happens, they're there anyway, even if we don't see them or recognize them. I think they're all there. And I like to think that they come through from all different dimensions. So we are existing in a multi-dimensional landscape all the time. And the way that I kind of explain it is these spheres can kind of come and go through dimensions, and depending on our receptivity and our ability to sense into them, they will
mm,
at some point break or dissolve and start to release information, and our
mm,
bodies can start to then feel that, absorb them, and start to translate them into information and insights and knowledge that may surface up through our intuition or through our imagination. And
mm.
for me, that is the amazing practice of art, because creativity helps me tap into my intuition, my imagination, and my ability to really be receptive to, I think, a lot of the energy that's out there that our logical mind locks us off from. So it's a
Yeah.
much more open state. And I think because art is an embodied practice, it's a safe practice. It helps us bring that information in a safe way, that it doesn't matter how slow it is, doesn't matter how long it takes.
Mm,
Our bodies are starting to engage with it, starting to think about, well, how can I bring this up through Jordan's imagination, or start sending Jordan pictures or senses or, feelings that can help her be open to this kind of knowledge and insight that's out there waiting for us to be receptive to it.
yeah. Yeah, I'd love to get kind of deeper into because everyone's creative process is different, and you have this unique perspective where not just being an artist, but kind of being more of like an awakened artist and like a conscious creator, it seems. And I guess can you maybe describe and some of the steps of your process just with maybe painting first and what
Yes,
that's like?
yes. One of the things, and this is what I talk about with my students as well, because I see it so much when people come into the studio, they always come in with this fixed idea. They come in with an idea in their head and they want to paint it, or they want to see something amazing emerge. And they all really want to do it very quickly. They want to, spend 2 hours in the studio and come out with a beautiful finished artwork. And for
Mm,
me, that has never been my process. So my process is actually very slow.
mm,
I never try and have an idea of what I'm painting, and I always have about 50 different artworks going on at any given time.
oh,
So
wow.
part of my process is never to have a game plan, to always turn up and just be with paint and just see what happens.
Mm,
Because I think when we try and control the process, we are moving into a place of fixed experience, where in actual fact the more fun experience is to just be open and see what happens, and to be playful. I
mm,
think we forget how much playfulness is part of innovation and exploration and
mm,
inventing things. And the more we learn how to just relax and see what happens, the more happens, I think. So when I'm in the studio, I usually start with one color. So I will get out my paints. I will gravitate to the color that's talking to me on any given day, and it's always different.
mm,
I usually have white as well. And so I will only use a limited color palette and a small amount of paint, and I will just start with whatever, I'll walk around the studio, I'll go through all of my different things, and I'll pick up something that's speaking to me, and I'll
mm,
start making marks. And it may be that I only spend 3 minutes on that and I'll make a couple of marks and then I'll move on to the next thing. So I'm using the same colors on like 20 different paintings, but only making a little mark on any given one. And for me, that really helps me because I'm actually working, even though it's slow in the sense that the final works take a while to emerge, I'm actually working quickly in the moment. So a bit here, a bit there, and it stops me from overthinking it. So I'm still in that intuitive space where I'm just responding to a little piece where I can say, oh, I could fix something there, or I could add something, or I could make a few marks. And I love that process. I love that process of just having lots of art energy around me, moving into this and then moving into that. And for me, that translates into life as well. So I take my art practice into life as well, where whatever I'm working on, I just move into it intuitively. I do a bit, I move on to something else. You know, I do have a portfolio career, so I am doing this constantly with a bunch of different things as well. But it starts in the studio. The studio is really my foundational practice for life.
Very cool. Thank you. Yeah, and I wonder if you could do the same. You also are a writer. I imagine there's some similarities or differences, but what is it like with the writing process?
Yeah, look, the writing process is really different actually, and it's quite painful. And sometimes I don't know why I do it. Because for me, I had started with that idea that words weren't actually the best medium to be using. And I still don't think that they are. I think that language limits us. It limits us into a fixed idea of expression and experience. And it is a limited vocabulary. No matter how many words we have, I still think it's a logical structure. So whenever we're working with a logical language structure, we're limited.
Right.
And so you would think that with me thinking that, I would never even worry about writing a book. But it was my first passion. Writing was always my first passion. And funnily enough, when I was going through this process of, evolving and changing, I stopped writing for a long period. You know, when I had made that decision that words weren't good enough, I stopped. When I got into art, I started again, and I just wanted to honor the fact that the words had started flowing again, and they really had started flowing in a very intuitive sense. So the intuitive part of writing is the best bit. I sit in a cafe in the morning, I have a really strong coffee, and I write with pen and paper, and it's very messy and it just all comes down and it's a real dump. And it is an intuitive download. I think it's really just coming from a place of that I feel very connected to. What pains me is turning it into a structure.
Yeah.
But, it's the translation process. It's taking all of this stuff and turning it into a story. But it's a labor of love, and it's a labor of love that I go through with a lot of friends in the writing community. It's a wonderful way to connect with the people who are also going through the same process. So writers love to talk about writing in the same way that artists do. But so look, the writing process is a little bit more. It's a little bit more painful to me. Because it has got a lot of different components to it.
Sure.
So it's not like, I suppose painting, I love it because it all feels easy, whereas writing is a little bit more complicated. But as I said, they still serve each other. I still write regardless, and I still believe in storytelling and books. Because that's part of who we are as our human DNA, and I think there's so much richness in us being able to evolve through story that, I stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever you talk about these downloads, and I can relate to that. I'm sure people that are watching this can relate to that experience in different ways. Do you ever find yourself having like moments of deja vu where like within your creativity, where it's like something comes through where it's like words or sentences or maybe a color or a part of a painting you make, and you go, why does it seem like familiar? Like, did I, like, as if it was in a dream the night before, or if it's like it's already happened in some weird way on another dimensional level, and then now it's starting to happen and manifest, and you're like, this seems oddly familiar. Does that ever happen to you at all, or ever something you ever notice? Or
it's a really interesting question, and I find it hard to answer because I so often feel like I'm not quite sure which dimension I'm in at any given point in time. Like I feel like I'm constantly shifting between dimensions, so it's hard for me to say where something is coming from.
Sure.
So yes, look, I think resonance is something that is important to me. So it may not necessarily be an experience of deja vu, but it's an experience of heightened resonance. So things and people give me a sense of knowing, like, this is, yes, this is something, there is something here, there's power in this moment, or in this symbol, or in this, conversation. So that's the kind of thing that helps me navigate
Got it.
through the process. The downloads will come, but then I think there is a process of matching it up through where is the resonance that will help me connect that download to a conversation, or to a way to express it, in a way that I can share it, and it will be received in the way that I've received it, or reinterpreted in a way that helps the information kind of extend on.
Yeah, yeah. You talk about the different like dimensional levels. Is that something that you just started to become aware of all at once, or kind of unfolded over time? What was your experience with that? Because that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, look, I think storytelling has always been the way that I've always been connected to different dimensions, and I think we
Mm.
all are. I
Yeah.
do think it's a matter of how much we're open to it, and it's still something that's unraveling for me. The one thing that I think is that my storytelling, and through my writing, I think, is how I'm connected to many different dimensions and levels, and I feel like that's the conduit. That's what helps me find parts of that different kind of existence and bring them all here.
Mm.
But the thing that I end up with is that our vibration brings us to the place where we're supposed to be. So wherever I am, being right here in this point in time is actually where my soul is doing its best learning. So I
Ah,
think wherever I show up, this is the place, this is the dimension that has the meaning for me. Regardless of how many other places I am or have been, or parts of me have existed, it all comes together in the now, I think, which
yeah.
I like. I think it's healthy and helpful and I suppose it's come from an experience of, the experience of star seeds as well. I think, people who feel connected to different dimensions, and who have had a strong sense of being connected to their galactic families and other
Mm.
places. There can be a feeling, I think, that arises of feeling a little bereft, and saying, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I want to go home, or I want to be back there with my family. And I think that's a challenge for anyone that can have that heightened sense of dimensional experience, where there are so many different places to be in the universe. Firstly, I
Right.
think, how amazing is that we can have this sense of the universe being so broad. And I love to think that every place is a school as well. And for me, Earth School is the place where I've chosen to be. And Earth School is an incredible place, I think.
I agree with that for sure. This is a sometimes a tough place to learn, but
Yeah.
but worth it. Yeah, I agree. I like it.
Yeah.
I want to move to the topic of creative blocks. I'm sure all artists run into this, or even just people
Yeah.
that don't consider themselves artists, where they're just everything
Yes.
is creative, right? Just creating a meal or whatever it is. You run into these blockages, small or big. What do you feel is happening with that, or how do you navigate those?
Yeah, it's a big one. And I agree with you in the sense that creative roadblocks don't just happen to creative people. They
Yeah.
happen to everyone. And it's good to just recognize them. And I think the first thing is knowing, when you're dealing with a roadblock. So
Mm.
it took me a long time to realize that for me, when I've got a creative roadblock, I just distract the hell out of myself. So I do
Mm.
all the stuff. I do the busy work. I do the distracting stuff. I watch heaps of TV. I'm on social a lot. I'm just doing all the stuff that I don't really need to be doing, because
Yeah.
there's something that I can't do. So I think just taking the time to sit with that and understand, am I doing a lot of stuff to distract myself? What am I looking away from? What am I really scared to look at? And the moment we can say, oh, I'm just doing the busy stuff because I've got a hurdle and I can't face it. So now I'm going to turn and I'm going to think through what it is that's so hard about the hurdle or the
Mm.
creative roadblock. That, I think, is the biggest thing. The moment we know that we're just distracting ourselves from it is the moment we take our power back, and the moment we are then empowering ourselves to navigate through whatever the hurdle is. And sometimes it's a big one and sometimes it's a small one. But what I think is, the moment you look at it, and start to think it through, it becomes easier. So the moment you go, oh, this is a hurdle, this is what I've been trying to avoid, I
Mm.
can see it, but I'm going to start breaking it down, and I can figure a way through it. I think that's very empowering. And I think it's very true that we can. We just have to articulate it. So we have to be able to put it into some kind of framework to say, this is the block. And sometimes these hurdles are really, they're really reasonable hurdles. Hurdles aren't always bad. Hurdles can be, for me, I just don't have the headspace to really give the attention to this piece of work. So I know that I need to give myself a couple of days off before I can even look at it. And that's another step that you can take. Go away, have a break, stop working, stop doing everything, take a holiday, take a long weekend, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. That's a great way to give yourself the best chance of navigating a hurdle. Come back and look at it, and then you're in the best state of mind to break it down. Sometimes if it's not something that's basically just about your needs, like, you're needing more sleep or more brain power, sometimes you just need to ask for help as well. So sometimes it's about feedback creatively. For me, I always like to, if I'm going to ask for feedback, I will usually be specific. So I'll be, I'm kind of stuck. I don't really know how this is landing. And mostly it's with my writing. I'll say, I'm looking for feedback on how the characters are relating to each other. Let me know what you think. So I think if you are asking for feedback, you should be really clear about what you want people to give you feedback on, because, it's an endless bucket and you don't want people to give you all the stuff that you don't want to worry about. So being clear about it, and also asking a few people, and remembering that you don't always have to take everyone's feedback on. So it's a choice. So if I hear something once, I'll think about it. If I hear the same thing twice, I'll start to worry. And if I hear the same thing 3 times, I know that I probably need to come up with some solutions. And then, that's okay. But it's still under my control. I can continue the way I was, but now I've got some ideas about where there might be some solutions. So taking feedback on board. But the best thing that I think often is space and time. So give something space and time to resolve itself. That can also help. The idea that we have to push through hurdles is something that I'm really, through a lot of conversations with other creative people, is something that I think we're all thinking that, maybe that's not always the best way. I think we've inherited this narrative and this language that in life you just have to push through, and you have to push through till you get onto the other side. And that's about strength, and that's about, so it is a little bit about, there is a little bit of a resilience thread there. But I think sometimes things do resolve themselves if you give them a space to do so. I always like to, if I'm stuck, I always like to invite the universe in to help. And sometimes there will be an experience or a person that comes in with a different opinion or a different lived experience for myself, which helps me resolve something that's been stuck. And me personally, I don't mind things taking a while to resolve. A lot of my artworks take ages to resolve. I have to literally put them in a cupboard and not look at them for months. And then I'll come back and I'll be able to see with fresh eyes. And I think that clarity also helps naturally dissolve some of the tensions that may have been there in the beginning.
Yeah. But it sounds like you have a lot of patience where you're able to kind of, okay, I can put this away, or this is going to take time, and that's totally fine. So it sounds like the patience is, it sounds like you have a lot of just trust in yourself or spirit, or just like the process. Does that seem like that's something?
Yeah, it is. I am patient because I do have a lot of things on the go. I do a lot of different things. And so that gives me the flexibility. If something's stuck, I can move on to something else and let that thing sit and resolve itself. And that's not for everyone. So, for example, if you're an artist and you're working to an exhibition and you've got to have 50 paintings done by a certain date, you're probably going to have some alternate techniques for navigating through challenges. And they will be specific to that environment and that situation. And there are lots of different ways to resolve or navigate these hurdles and roadblocks. But I think, we all have them. I think finding the thing that works for you the best is a great approach, because everyone does have different paths. And for me, the path has been a slow path. So it takes me a long time to finish an artwork, to finish a book, but I love the journey. I love the journey of sitting with the challenges and the problems. And it is all about that. For me, it is about the learning that I get from the experiences as well. So for me, I really like to take the time. I do a lot of reflection. I do a lot of journaling, and you don't have to. It's just that I love it. That's the richness of the journey for me. Like, this is the experience. What am I getting from it? And it helps me feel like my soul is being nourished because I'm sitting with these things and I'm learning from them. It is like an education in itself. A creative project is a massive self-development opportunity because of all these things that come up.
Right. when you go to create, I mean, like you talked about reflection, like reflecting on like a piece, whether it's the painting or something you've written, like how much do you see of yourself in that? Even if you're writing like something fictional, like how much do you see yourself, in that, like the
Yeah.
character, or like.
Yeah. Look, I'm laughing because it really is a great question, and I think there's two different things that come to mind. So when I talk about reflective practice, I'm really reflecting on how I am being in the moment. So it's not necessarily about the work. I'm not necessarily reflecting on the artwork or the story. I'm thinking,
Mm,
how am I being as a human being? How am I being as a person? And what
mm,
what am I seeing in my own responses and my own
mm,
self-talk and the things that are triggering me or exciting me? What am I loving?
mm.
What's making me feel completely alive? And that kind of journaling process is it's one of the most beautiful things I love about life. I love the sense that it gives me of gratitude and freedom and um, ownership, really.
Mm.
Um, Now, what was I going to say about the other part of it? Um,
Like seeing yourself, like how much do you see
Yeah,
yourself in your own writing,
yes.
and
Every character in the book has a part of me,
yeah.
and that's one of the things. So, for example, with the book that I've released this year, it's the story of a metalsmith who has
Mhm.
learned how to tune metal to otherworld frequencies, and really, that story started from me studying sculptural metalwork in Scotland when I was starting to play with all of these ideas. So there is always the chance to use your characters to explore a part of yourself, and I think they do carry a little bit of your DNA anyway. I'm not sure I've ever written a character that doesn't have a little bit of my own DNA in there, it just makes it part of me, I think.
Sure, sure, yeah. That makes sense. And then I want to talk about your inspiration. Everyone has different types of inspiration for creativity and creative process, whether it's nature or dreaming or meditation or whatever. What are your sources of inspiration for all this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when I'm actively doing creative work, I'm really not trying to think about anything. So I do get a lot of inspiration from nature. So I am out in nature a lot because I think that it just gives me so much life energy. And it helps me also balance the energy that comes through in the painting and the writing. But I think the driving force has always been, what does it mean to have a way of expressing things that exists beyond the language that we know? So
Mm,
going back to when I was 19, saying, language isn't, we haven't figured out language yet. We don't really know the best way. And I
mm,
think all of it has been around exploring vibration and vibrational language and being able to think about, what does that mean? What could that mean as a better way of communing and connecting? So for me, the artwork is really, as I've spoken about with the circles, vibration and sound, and what exists when we break down sound or we look at sound in a different way, as if sound and intelligence and information could travel between dimensions in a way that we can connect with, and in an embodied way.
mhm,
In the books, it's really about, well, what happens when these characters start to tune into otherworld frequencies? What is the process that they use to do it? How do they bring information back? How do they start to
mm,
travel across dimensions? So it really is about exploring that bigger universe that we exist in, the
mm.
dimensions that we can access and explore, and what that allows us to bring back to this human experience. I think that's been the bigger picture for me in terms of creative inspiration.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wonder because like sometimes I have frustration with writing or just that linear,
Yes,
letter
absolutely.
word, putting it all
Yes.
together. And I'm wondering whether for myself or even with you, if this resonates at all, that if some of the frustration is that if you have this awakened sense within you as a spiritual being, that that we communicate in a certain way, whether we communicate with images, that's very fast and immediate, and then having to write and do this process down here on this physical dimension can be
Yes.
frustrating. Do you
Yes.
sense any of that? So some of the source of the frustration of like having that awareness?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It feels like an old-fashioned way. It feels like we're still using this really old school way of sharing knowledge and information. And I do think there are better ways. I think we are collectively moving towards something that is far more energetic and far more energy based.
Mm.
But even that sense of this is clunky, this is hard. I think that we have to feel that first before we start that journey or continue on that journey of seeking something better. But I like the fact that you've said that. I like hearing that from other people, and I've heard it from others as well that have said similar things. This is clunky, this doesn't feel like the best way. So that's
Right.
the question. What is the best way? And I think one of the things with intuition and abstract creativity, and it is subjective, so how do we bridge that gap between the subjective and the collective? How do we create a collective reference point for vibrational language? It's a whole nother thing, but it's an exciting frontier. I think it's one that I'm really keen to keep exploring.
Yeah, definitely. Um, how do people connect with you? People that want to explore your art, maybe purchase it. You have that book.
Yes.
And then I think you said you teach as well. How do people connect with you and discover
Yes,
more?
yes. So I do. I have an art studio where I sell my art and have people come and make art with me in courses and
Oh,
workshops. You can find that on my website, jordanharcourthughes.com. And you can find all about my writing practice and my book. I've just started a new podcast called Sacred Stories of the Spirit, which is about the stories that we have to share with each other of our human experience as well. So you can look that up and find me on YouTube as well.
very cool. Absolutely. Yeah, I'll link that below in the description so people can kind of connect with you easier that way.
Yeah, perfect.
Um, so I always leave at the very end. You don't have to use it, but you definitely can. I just leave kind of an open space that if there's something that we missed you feel is important or any final message or anything you want to share to the audience, this would be a good time to do that. But it's up to you.
No, listen, I think I've loved the conversation. I think the questions are great. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, though. It's always nice to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jordan, I appreciate your time and being here and sharing your experiences and wisdom with us. So thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for tuning into another episode. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, Andrew.